Hey, what's going on everyone? In this Master Grade review, we'll be taking a look at one of the most unique lead Gundams out there, the Turn A Gundam. You know, everyone makes fun of this suit's design, but personally, I really like it, so this Master Grade was a must-buy for me. As always, we'll be reviewing this Master Grade Gundam in 4 categories: the build, appearance, articulation, and gimmicks. We'll be giving each a score from 1 to 5, so at the end we can tally it all up for an average score. Hopefully this Master Grade can be just as interesting as this suit's design. Alright, now let's jump right into this build here. The Turn A is probably one of the strangest lead Gundams in the entire franchise, so naturally this build was really out there. Like, you'd expect the ankles to be the standard ball joints, but nope, it's a hinge connected to a swivel connected to another hinge. Well, what about the shoulders? You'd expect they'd get a hinge too, right? But nope, it's some kind of ring with a swivel that connects to the back of the chest with a peg. This kit also doesn't feature any polycaps, instead opting for an inner frame made entirely of old school ABS plastic. I'm willing to bet even experienced builders will find some stuff they've never seen before while building this guy. Beginners also won't have much to worry about here, since despite the weird engineering, there really isn't anything that technical. This is all around just great stuff from Bandai. One of the highlights of this build is this head. See, the eyes aren't the usual stickers, but instead molded in clear yellow that you plug into a black piece. You then apply a reflective sticker to the inside to make the eyes pop. It's a really cool concept. Another highlight are these moving fins on the back of the leg. Since there's an extra hinge in the shin, yes, really, when you bend this leg, a few of these fins on the back will pop out. It's not super noticeable, but still really cool. Moving on to the armor, you'll notice there aren't any seriously bad nubs, the seam lines are all pretty well thought out, and almost everything is molded in its correct color. Even these thick gray lines on the thigh and forearm are actually inner frame poking through. However, I wouldn't say you can just snap build this guy and be done. No, this kit is a panel lining monster. Thankfully, much of these channels are pretty deep, so they're not too hard to get looking good. I also recommend breaking out the modeling glue, specifically for these pieces on the side of the thigh and arm. They just have a slight tendency to pop off. These yellow triangles on the front skirts also need a fair amount of glue to stay in place. Surprisingly, there is actually a little bit of painting to do on this kit. First up, you'll need to add these red dots to the thigh. There's no provided sticker here, however there is a nice deep channel for some paint. Next, there are these black squares on the side skirts. You get stickers for them, and for once they actually look pretty good. I'm actually using them here. However, since this is a separate piece, it'd be a real quick paint job. Part of me wants to do that right after this review. Next, I added a dab of gray paint to these dashes on the forearm and this one on the knee. I also added some gray to the inside of the shoulder armor. That way, when you place these covers over top, this open section will look like it has a bit more depth to it. The same goes for this raised section on the head. You could just paint the bottom of it black, so when you plug it in, this gap seems way deeper. Lastly, and probably most importantly, there's the iconic green Turn A symbol on the head. You get 2 dry transfers for it, so you do have a second chance in case you mess up. But thankfully Bandai provided really solid channels for it, so it's almost easier to just fill with green paint than lightly run an X-Acto blade flush against the channel to scrape off some of the excess. Of course, that's just my method. I'm sure there's a better way out there. Alright, the build for this kit is everything I'd want it to be. It's strange and unique in ways I really haven't seen in any other Master Grade. However, there are quite a few nitpicks here. Still, I'd say this build is pretty close to perfect, deserving a 4.5 out of 5. This is definitely a treat for experienced builders, but it's also not really out of reach for beginners. Okay, now let's talk about this appearance. Despite the divisive design of the Turn A, this model kit seems to be going for an anime-accurate look, and it succeeds in every way. First up, these proportions. The Turn A's anime look had these huge legs, and with this kit being designed by Katoki, the legs are just that. The chest may be a little slimmed up, but it's nothing too crazy. Everything just syncs up very well on this kit. I will say the head is a little bit more round than I'd like, but thankfully this mustache is perfectly recreated, and really, that's the important thing here. The colors on this kit are pretty solid, with the white being super bright, great for contrasting with this gray panel lining. The red and blue are a little on the darker side, but that could just be in comparison to how bright this white is. The yellow on this kit is a bit of an issue for me though. At least it was before I repainted it all. Originally it was this very toyish yellow. It was really off when compared to the dark red and blue, and was just too, primary, I guess you could say? I don't know. I just personally like a little bit of orange mixed into my yellow. There's only like 3 yellow pieces, so it was really quick to paint up. Finally, let's take a look at these panel lines. Well, they're just perfect. I mean, this is literally every line from the line art, just brought into 3D. It's just amazing. Make sure you have a solid method for panel lining here, because this kit just wouldn't look the same without all these lines. Believe it or not, this kit actually does come with decals. No caution signs, of course, because that really wouldn't make sense in the Turn A, but you do get some nice faction symbols and a really nice model number. You also get 2 decals of the show's logo. I don't really know what you're supposed to do with them, but it's still a really cool idea. So the appearance of this kit is really just perfect. The proportions were amazing, the colors were just fine, and the panel lines were really solid. My only issue here is the original yellow, and honestly, that was such a quick fix I really can't complain. I really couldn't see any reason not to give this appearance a perfect 5 out of 5. This is the best looking Turn A in model kit form, hands down. Now let's see if this kit can hit any cool poses. Starting at the feet, you get really solid tilts downward from both the toes and heels. Despite all this complex engineering in the ankle, you only get about the same movement as a ball joint, especially since it's also hampered by the ankle guards. Because of all this engineering mixed with ABS plastic, these ankles will become extremely loose over time. Now, I've mentioned in quite a few of my other reviews that I'm a big fan of using ABS plastic for inner frames. It's just really solid and sturdy, especially when compared to the polystyrene used in modern inner frames. However, it does have a downside. Because of how thick it is, it really doesn't conform or adjust to joints over time. Hinges and ball joints specifically can become extremely loose, especially if they're weighed down with heavy limbs. This really isn't an issue on smaller kits like the Crossbones, but on a 20-meter tall Gundam like the Turn A, it's a serious problem. You know, I have to admit it here. This is one kit where ABS plastic is a serious detriment. Okay, now let's get back to this articulation. There's actually a hinge inside of the shin that allows for almost a 45-degree bend. It's really useful for getting those cool running poses. You get a very solid 180-degree bend from the knee, just real great stuff here. The hips are the standard swivel mounts, so you get great kicks, splits, and spins. I will say they can pop out of the waist if you're not careful. They also can't really hold the legs up once you get them in the air. This running pose took about 10 minutes to get solid, and every second was full of frustration. The front skirts will also fall off pretty quickly. They're on 2 really small swivels for the core fighter transformation, so they'll pop off pretty frequently. The side skirts are just loose ball joints though, so no issues here. Moving on up, you get a solid spin from the bottom of the chest and some decent tilts on top. They'll get extremely loose over time though, so he'll probably be leaning to one side after a while, especially if he's holding the shield. For all these poses you see with him holding the shield here, you'll notice I'm actually using his hand as support against the leg to help keep him level. The shoulders are really hard to work with on this kit too. Like I said in the build, they're this weird ring connected to the back of the chest with a peg. The end result is the back staying in place while you can rotate the front part backwards, allowing him to reach forwards or behind him to get his beam sabers. Despite this, these shoulders will still get in the way all the time. It's actually impossible to get the usual 360-degree spin here. The shoulder joint itself has a little hinge inside, allowing for a slight pop out. You also get the usual lateral movement, which is aided by this little flap on the shoulder armor. Of course, don't expect any shooting poses here, since this arm will more than likely droop down over time. Working our way down the arm here, we have a solid 360-degree spin from the elbow, about a 135-degree bend from the main elbow joint, and the hands are on pretty deep ball joints. You only get 2 sets of hands with this kit, the first having individual fingers and pegs, allowing him to hold most of his weapons with relative ease. You do have to be careful with these fingers though, as they will pop out from time to time. The second set of hands is a dedicated open palm, which works great for some reaching towards the moon poses. Lastly, on the head, it's a weird locking ball joint on a swivel. All said and done, it's basically a pretty restricted ball joint. It's extremely loose though. Mine's practically a bobblehead at this point. You can push it inwards like a Zaku 2.0 though, which I'm always a big fan of and helps keep the head steady. Alright, this kit makes great use of its weird engineering. However, the use of ABS plastic in these hinges causes a ton of loose joints and weight issues. Honestly, he became a plastic nightmare after a few months. I'm definitely going to try and thicken up some of these joints after this review. Still, this articulation is above average, especially out of the box, so we'll have to give this kit's articulation a respectable 4 out of 5. While he can hit all kinds of cool poses, over the years he'll get pretty hard to handle. Finally, let's take a look at these gimmicks. First up, you get this strange looking beam cannon. It's such a unique design, I just love it. I will say you have to paint this section red, and there's a few sections needing black if you want it to be 100% anime accurate. Speaking of anime accurate, you can actually open up the butt of this gun to reveal a rotating handle, just like in the opening theme song. It's a really cool gimmick. He can hold it pretty decently thanks to a peg in the hands, but it can still be very frustrating with this shoulder armor. Surprisingly, I found getting a two-handed pose a bit easier. He can also hold this cannon by the handle on top, just like in the original design illustrations. Next are his beam sabers. They're really small, so he has no issues holding them up. They also have a ton of panel lining on them, so I'm sure someone with some patience could get them looking really good. Both sabers store on these special connecting pieces on the shoulders. I really like that you can remove them entirely if you want a more clean silhouette. Moving on, you get this amazing shield. This is such an otherworldly design, it's so cool. It attaches to the forearm with a simple but solid peg. You can also slide it up and down to fit in whatever position you want. Lastly, you get his hyper hammer, which is more of a ball and chain. The handle is a similar size to the beam saber, so again, no issues holding it up. You can also store this entire arsenal on the suit itself. Using these little attachment points that plug into a slot behind the shoulder, you can pop in both the shield and beam cannon. It also has room for the two beam sabers to be stored on top. This leaves one hand open for the hyper hammer. If you've seen my Mark II version 2.0 review, you know I'm a sucker for this kind of thing. It just looks so cool, you know? Plus, it's nice not having to break out a Ziploc bag whenever I want to change the weapons. The suit itself comes with a core fighter as well. It actually looks pretty solid, with this yellow hatch being undergated. You do have to be careful when transforming it though, as these two swivels on the skirts can be kinda weak. This top yellow piece does rotate around as well, which is pretty cool, but it will pop out all the time. Part of me wants to just glue it down at this point. Next, Bandai included this optional white cross for the chest. It's based off the original design for the Turn A, and personally, I think it looks really awesome. I know I'm all about anime accuracy, and that's kind of my thing, but part of me wants to display it like this instead. It just adds so much character to it, you know? Bandai also included the ability to open up these hatches on the chest to reveal these molded-in missiles. Of course, with them being all gray, they really aren't going to stand out too much. You'll probably need a thick coat of red or green paint if you want them to look good. You can also remove them entirely to leave the chest hollow. It's just enough room to place the included cow figurine. Yeah, this kit comes with a 1/100th cow figurine. Moving on to the back of the chest, there are more flaps you can open up. Something tells me this is for that premium Bandai exclusive Moonlight Butterfly attachment. Lastly, the action base point is actually found on the back of the chest rather than between the legs. This is really great and allows the legs to move freely. Okay, and that should do it for the gimmicks here. This kit really comes with everything you could ask for, and it all works pretty well. Sure, I could complain about the lack of Moonlight Butterfly, but really, I don't find myself missing it all that much. There's just so much else going on here, you know? We'll have to give these gimmicks a perfect 5 out of 5. Really, they're all pretty great, and they're only really let down by their articulation and a few weak joints. Alright, now let's wrap this up for an average score. The build was a 4.5 out of 5. It's one of the most unique Gundam builds out there. However, there are a few nitpicks here. The appearance was a 5 out of 5. It really doesn't get any better than this. The articulation was a 4 out of 5. You get some solid, albeit weird movement, but this ABS plastic really hurts in the long run. The gimmicks received another 5 out of 5. While I'd love to take points off for not including the Moonlight Butterfly, I can't say I really miss it here. Tallying all that up, dividing, and of course rounding, this Master Grade Turn A Gundam receives a 4.6 out of 5. In terms of an unrounded percentage, it receives a 92.5%. Yep, this is another one of those must-buy kits. It's right up there with those version 2.0 kits I praised so much. The build was really interesting, the appearance is amazing, and it has tons of great gimmicks. While the articulation does fall short over time, I'm sure you can thicken up some of these joints with glue or cement. Or at least, that's my plan after this review. I mean, seriously, he needs it. Still, if you're into Turn A and you're looking for a Master Grade, this would be the kit for you. It is by far the best Turn A in model kit form. Alright, thanks for watching, and feel free to leave any questions or comments below, and I'm more than happy to get back to you. You can also follow me on Instagram for updates, work in progress builds, the whole thing. Okay, thanks for watching, and see you next time.